Hello, Riyansh.
Hello,
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
I hope you had a great week.
hmm
Okay. So I believe this is the last session we are having for the course. And yeah, maybe we'll have a couple of sessions later for any doubts you come up with and analysis of your mock tests. Right? Okay. So where did we leave
Is it
off?
the last
Yeah.
one?
Yeah, we will be completing the sessions today. So we
So
were
session
doing,
8 and 9.
yeah, just an eight was half done, almost done, and we just
Yeah.
have 9 to go,
Okay.
right? Any doubts on whatever we did so far?
Mm,
Have you written down anything? No? Okay. So I suppose you'll be coming up with doubts once you start with your mocks.
okay.
So we'll take them up as and when they come. Right? Just a moment. I'll just share the screen. Okay, so last time we did the punctuations. Yeah. So are you thorough with the punctuation so far?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of. So we did the commas. Commas were the most important because we tend to use commas just about anywhere. So rules of commas you've done. So can you tell me something, anything you remember about the rules of commas?
For commas. So they were like, you can put a comma and then you have to write your sentence, whatever. And then you cannot put any other signs. You have to put comma again. You cannot put a dash or like comma and comma. It's
Comma and
basically
comma. When would you use comma and comma? What comes in the middle?
So
What comes between the two commas?
basically the explanation part.
Yeah, and extra information.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any
Supplements.
extra information which we can say is a non-essential information, which can be removed from the sentence, and the rest of the sentence is still grammatically correct and a complete sentence.
Yeah.
So you can use 2 commas or 2 dashes or parentheses.
2 dashes and parentheses.
Yeah. Okay. Any other use of commas? When we are talking about independent clauses in the middle of the sentence, what would you use?
So if you have like a dependent clause for and that's an independent clause. So dependent clause, comma, and independent clause.
Independent clause, right?
Independent clause, a comma, like independent clause first. Do you put a comma? No, I don't think you put a comma.
No. Independent and then dependent, then no comma.
Independent, then dependent, no comma.
Okay. And what about 2 independent clauses?
You can put a period. You can put a semicolon.
Yeah.
I forgot.
What, and if you're going to use a comma, how would you use a comma between 2 independent clauses?
Oh, no, you cannot use a comma, right?
You cannot use only comma.
Oh, you
What
can
would
use
you need?
comma and then fanboys.
Fanboys, right. So you're quite thorough with that. Okay, what about some modifiers we said. Okay, so this was one thing we had come across when we're using modifiers. If you have the modifier in the beginning of the sentence,
you put a comma.
Comma after that. If you have a modifier in the middle of the sentence, comma on both sides. If you have a modifier at the end of the sentence, comma before it.
Before it.
And what was the other rule about modifiers? Very important rule about modifiers, where SAT tests you mostly on, apart from the punctuation. This was early. We did that earlier when we did modifiers. Very important rule about modifiers. What does a modifier do?
It's extra info, right?
Not just extra information. It is an information relating, when we talk about modifiers, now there's a little difference between modifiers and supplements.
Okay.
Remember?
Yeah.
When we talk about non-restrictive clauses as supplements, then we would say that that would be extra information which can be removed from the sentence. But if you're talking about modifiers, that is extra information relating to something, some noun, and that noun should be next to the modifier. Right? That is one very important rule about modifiers. So any modifier, you'll have a comma after the modifier and the noun coming right after the modifier. So whatever the modifier is talking about, that subject should be next to the modifier right after or before the comma. If the modifier is in the beginning of the sentence, right after the comma. If the modifier is at the end of the sentence, then right before the comma. Yeah. So these rules are never to be forgotten. Okay, so now we also spoke about where not to use commas. Are you clear about that?
The essential clauses.
Where not to use commas.
Essential clauses, right? Then we learned that when there is that, we put no comma.
When there was that, you use no commas. Anything else? The most important was in the middle of two independent clauses. Only comma would be wrong. That would be a comma splice would be incorrect. Before an open parenthesis, you don't use a comma, right?
Yeah.
Where
can use it after.
You can use it after, depending upon how the sentence is formed.
Yeah.
If you have an independent clause before or a dependent clause before, you can use a comma. And if it is an independent clause before the parenthesis, then you can use a comma provided there's a fanboys conjunction after it.
Okay.
Right? Okay, before or after that, you don't use a comma. Okay, how did you punctuate such as? Where does the comma come? Before or after?
Such as.
Such as?
Such as after, right?
No, before such as. Yeah. So if you're writing such as or for example, and then the examples follow, the comma will come before such as or before for example.
Yeah.
Right? So the comma will never be after such as. Okay, what else did we do? Okay. Okay, with prepositions, you wouldn't use commas.
Yeah, where we cannot use two semicolons and colons.
Yeah. Okay, now what was the rule for semicolon? Between two independent clauses, right?
Yeah.
If you had two independent clauses, you could use a semicolon.
We don't need fanboys.
Yeah, then you don't need fanboys.
Okay.
And where else did we use semicolons?
Where else would we use?
You use semicolons in another place.
Use it when, what do you call? We have two independent clauses.
Two independent clauses. Apart from two independent clauses, in a list. In a list, when one of the items in the list has a comma in the middle, if a comma appears in one item in a list, use semicolons for the entire list instead of commas.
Okay.
Yeah, to separate items in a list. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was we did these two examples where we had a comma in one of these items, a pop-up tent which I borrowed, and this one had Nairobi, comma Kenya, and then semicolon coming after that. And what was the before after test for using semicolons?
Before and after test?
Hmm.
I don't have that note.
We did that.
Yeah, I didn't write that down.
It's there in the yeah, it's in your PDF also. Your study material has it. You can go through it later. So before, you're using a semicolon in the middle of two independent clauses. So if you come across a semicolon, what is the first thing you are going to see? The clause before the semicolon should be independent. The clause after the semicolon should be independent.
Okay.
Right? So if even one of the clauses is not independent, say if both the clauses of both the clauses, one is independent, one is dependent, then you will not use a semicolon in that case. So then you have to look for alternative. Do you use comma or not? So if the dependent clause, the clause before the semicolon is a dependent clause, you will use a comma. If the clause after the semicolon is a dependent clause, you won't use any punctuation. Got it? Okay. So now rules for colons, do you remember?
Colons.
A very important rule for using colons.
Is it used to like separate list?
Yeah. After the colon, anything can come up. There can be an explanation, there can be a list, there can be additional information. But what about the portion of the sentence before the colon?
Is it like explanation or something?
No. Before the colon, independent clause before the colon.
Oh, you okay. Yeah.
Remember?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a colon, what do you check? What comes before the colon? If that is an independent clause, then you can go on along with a colon, irrespective of what comes after the colon. It could be a list, it could be a fragment of a sentence, it could be an independent clause.
Okay.
Yeah, but before the colon should always be an independent clause. The portion of the sentence before the colon must be an independent clause. Now you remember?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about single dash?
Dashes.
Single dash, which can be used in place of colon.
Yeah.
Same rules apply?
Yeah.
Portion of the sentence before the single dash would be an independent clause. If you have just one dash towards the end of the sentence and something coming up, an explanation or something which you have stressed upon, or a list, anything that comes up after the colon or single dash. So this could also be replaced by a single dash. Here also you can replace this by a single dash. But the portion before the colon or single dash should always be an independent clause.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are rules you have to. So do you have a printout of your study material?
No.
Or you're
it's
using
online.
the PDF? Yeah. Okay. So when you're using the PDF, now what you will do after today. So over the week you will revise whatever we've done.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can mark, underline, circle, highlight, whatever is important, and use the PDF that way after that.
Okay.
Okay. So once you are revising, you will remember, okay, this was important, this was stressed upon, this is an important rule. Mark it. Right?
Okay.
Okay. So okay, dashes, we use them, you use dashes to indicate non-essential statements within a sentence. So you use double dash or parenthesis or two commas to separate non-essential elements in the middle of a sentence.
Okay.
And you could you use a dash instead of a colon also. So a single dash can be equivalent to a colon. Rules are the same for dashes and for a single dash and colon. What comes before the single dash should be an independent clause, right? So that's what you always have to check. Say this one, there are 3 characters that accompany Dorothy on her way to Oz. Is that an independent clause?
There are 3 characters. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the dash, you name the 3 characters. Say camping is my family's favorite pastime, dash, but not mine. Here also you could use a colon instead of a dash. Camping is my family's favorite pastime is an independent clause. So the main thing that you have to do is you have to be very careful about identifying clauses. So once you have identified the clause, whether it is independent or dependent, you know whether to use a colon, semicolon, or say a comma, whether the comma should be alone, whether the comma should have a fanboys conjunction with it. Yeah, all those. You will never make mistakes. So 2 dashes, parentheses, you know this. Okay. So now this is where we had left out on, right?
Yeah.
As far as I remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So now after all these rules, it boils down to doing our questions. Yeah. So the now in the how will you identify whether it's a punctuation question? Because your punctuations are used in supplements and clauses. They're also used in modifiers.
Yeah.
So now, if it is good, if suppose it is about punctuations, then the choices will be about adding or removing a punctuation or different types of punctuation marks coming in.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, the purpose could be very much the same as separating clauses, separating supplements, or or marking essential information or non-essential. Okay, if there is an essential information, then you will not use two commas or 2 dashes, etc.
Yeah.
Remember, essential informations are not to be punctuated. Non-essential informations are to be punctuated. Okay, so just to a gist of whatever we did so far. So this before after test for semicolons. Yeah, so it is both before and after. For so both sides we need independent clauses. Before test for colons, important to remember, independent clause before colon. Then whenever you have commas, double check for commas, whether what are the 2 clauses on both sides, whether it is necessary or not. Many times they will give you commas where they are not necessary. We don't even need a comma, and maybe your options have a comma. So you have to see, do we need a comma? Do we not need a comma? So commas for linking clauses, coordinate, you'll have either a coordinating conjunction or a subordinating conjunction, depending on whether the 2 are independent clauses or dependent clauses, right? So if you have to convert independent clause to dependent clause, what can you do?
You have to convert
Independent clause to dependent clause.
You put comma and then wait, how is that possible? Wait, you're saying how to convert an independent clause to a dependent clause?
You add a subordinating conjunction. Therefore, because, while. Remember?
Oh, fanboys. Okay.
Not fanboys.
Follow.
You can add because in the beginning of a sentence to make the first clause a dependent clause.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember we had done that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember the every
so
single.
when you had two independent clauses but you didn't have the correct, you had a comma in between, then you had the option of changing the first part into a dependent clause.
Yeah.
Or if you have two independent clauses without any punctuation in the middle, you can change the second clause into a dependent clause, then you don't need a punctuation in the middle. Right?
Okay.
Remember?
Mhm.
Okay. So let's do some, okay, these are just finding the error sentences. So you have this sentence, Snape advised them to, stay up all night, practice spells and eat bonbons. Is this sentence correct?
No.
Look at all the punctuations. Okay, no. Why no?
Snap advised them to. Is that?
Snape advised them to,
That is not independent, right?
yeah, this is not independent, so you should not have a colon. So you can remove the colon and you could just read, Snape advised them to stay up all night, practice spells. So advise them to stay up all night. This is the infinitive. You don't need a comma in the middle, right? Okay, let's look at this one. Quite a long sentence. The best hotel concierges have many skills, knowledge of foreign customs, the ability to speak several languages, and a charming manner, that put even the most diffident guests at ease. Now, is this sentence correct as it is? Now, some part of it has been underlined for you, so maybe you have to focus on that. So you have a colon over here. Okay, there was another important rule for colon. We missed out while we were revising. The portion before the colon should be an independent clause, that we know. Now, what about the portion, when we talk about the portion after the colon, the sentence should end with the explanation or list after the colon, and it should not continue beyond. So if you have a sentence like this, where the sentence itself continues beyond, say, the list or explanation after the colon, then you have to look into it and see what is the colon correct, even if what comes before the colon is an independent clause. So you have to, when we talk about the portion after the colon, the sentence should end with the explanation or list that comes after the colon. Yeah. Now, what do you see in this sentence? Now, we know that there's a colon here. What is the portion before the colon? The best hotel concierges have many skills. Now, that can come in as an independent clause, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an independent clause. But now, what about the portion after the colon? Now, if you see this portion which has been underlined, that forms a list. But what about the part beyond the
Going
list?
on, yeah.
Yeah. So here the sentence hasn't ended with the list. It goes on. So this is a part of the previous sentence.
Okay.
Right. So now if you read it without the colon, what do you think about the sentence? So can you divide the sentence into clauses now? So different parts of the sentence. This is the first part of the sentence. This underlined portion is the second part of the sentence, that is the portion after the colon. And this is the third part of the sentence. Right? So the
Instead of
best
that
hotel,
colon, can you put like?
Pardon?
Instead of that, can you put like?
We can put like, but anything else in punctuations can we do? what can we do about punctuations? We have a comma over here, remember? And we have a that coming up. If we use like over here, then still we have a problem. We can't have a comma before that.
So like many skills, comma.
Many skills, you want to use a comma here, then
Does that make sense?
figure out.
Semicolon.
Okay, I just cleared this for you so you can figure out now. Okay, now you do one thing. Just read the sentence and as if there's no semicolon over there. So what do you think of the sentence as such? As I said, divided into 3 parts. Now read the sentence, focusing on the 3 parts.
Now you cannot keep it in one sentence. We have to put some kind of punctuation.
Okay. So now the best hotel concierges have many skills. That is one part. Knowledge of foreign customs, the ability to speak several languages, and a charming manner that put even the most diffident guests at ease. Now look at this part of the sentence. Knowledge of foreign customs, the ability to speak several languages, and a charming manner. So that is a list of attributes that the best hotel concierges have, or the skills that they are talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Now look at the last part, that put even the most diffident guests at ease. So what is the structure of the sentence? You have an independent clause over here, fine. Now, this is what, now if you look at this portion, the list of skills, that comes in as an additional information.
Yeah.
Right? So what can we do instead of, now we can separate the additional information with the help of either 2 commas or 2 dashes or parentheses.
Yeah.
Right? Now in this case, we have a comma after the last item in the list, before that. Now if we were to use 2 commas, then how do we check whether it is an inessential information? Remove the portion within the commas.
Extra information. Yeah? It will make
remove
sense.
Remove the extra information. So then how does so then we will be removing the first comma. Yeah. So just remove it. Then we come up with 2 commas. Yeah. The best hotel concierges have many skills that put even the most diffident guests at ease. So if we remove everything in the middle, that's what we have. So now we know that we cannot use a comma before that. So what other punctuations can we use?
You can use a dash.
We can use a dash here and a dash here, right? Just a second. Clumsy. Okay. So we can replace the colon with a dash, and we can replace a comma with a dash. So then we don't have any problem with a comma before that, nor do we have a problem with a colon in the middle of the sentence where the sentence has not ended.
Yeah.
Right? So this is what you have to remember regarding colons. So number one, what comes before the, sorry. So if you have a colon, the portion that comes before the colon should be an independent clause. Portion after the colon should be an explanation or a list. But it should not, the sentence should not continue after that.
Okay.
If the sentence continues after the explanation of or list, then you do not use a colon.
Got it.
So the explanation or list in after the if the sentence continues after the explanation or list, that means that explanation or list would come in as an inessential information or additional information, and you will have to look for punctuations accordingly. So this is what we get. This was what we got, right? 2
Yeah.
dashes, and we were correct. Okay. So now let's look at another one here. So on our trip to London, we visited museums, palaces, and monuments. Would that be correct?
London we visited.
We visited museums, palaces, and monuments. Now, what comes after the colon is a list. Yeah, nothing beyond. So that's okay. But what about the portion before the colon?
It's not independent.
It's not an independent clause. So we cannot use a colon over here. So what can we do?
Move.
Do we require punctuation or not? That's what we have to see. If we require, then what punctuation do we require?
I don't think you need punctuation before we.
Right, we don't need punctuation. On our trip to London, we visited. On our trip to London, comma, could we
don't
use?
need
But
both of
we don't need more punctuations over here, right? So on
Yeah.
our trip to London, we visited these tourist attractions, then colon can come in. Or we can say, on our trip to London, we visited museums, palaces, and monuments without any punctuation. So if in case you want to use a colon, then the first part of the sentence should be an independent clause.
Yeah.
So on our trip to London, we visited these tourist attractions, becomes an independent clause. Right? Then colon, museums, palaces, and monuments would be correct. Okay. Now this one, I visited Seattle, Washington, Los Angeles, California, and San Francisco, Texas on my vacation. Now you have comma, 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 comma.
You can put a dash.
Now look at the items that, so the names, these are names of what? Seattle is a city. Washington,
Everything is a city, right? Oh, it's state and state.
it's a state. If you say
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., that's a city.
Yeah.
Seattle, which is in the state of Washington. Los Angeles is in the state of California. San Antonio is in the state of Texas. Yeah. So now what do?
We put semicolon.
Where?
After Washington, after California.
After Washington, after California, and Texas is on its own. We don't need, right? So it is very important to see if you have commas, what are they? What is the purpose of the comma? Are they placed correctly? So lots of commas and there's a list of places. Immediately you have to see, are the two places just cities, or are two of them related to each other in some way? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, what about this one? The architect worked on the model all night, comma, he was bleary-eyed during the presentation. Now, what is the sentence? We have a comma over here. What is a comma doing?
You just put a period, or you can use a comma fan buds.
So you have a comma. What did you first see? Whether the two clauses before and after the comma were independent or dependent. Yeah. So what did you find? The architect work on the model of all night is independent. This is also independent. Yeah. So we can't use only comma. We need something else.
Yeah.
We can use a semicolon instead of a comma, or we need a comma and a conjunction. Yeah. So if we were to use a conjunction, now we can use semicolon straight away. Suppose we didn't have the option of semicolon. If we needed a conjunction,
you can put a colon, or you can put a semicolon.
We can use a colon also. Or if we were to use a conjunction, what could it be?
A a fanboy.
So what would be the fanboys conjunction you would use over here? What is it? So then if you wanted to use a fanboys conjunction, what do you have to see? The relationship between the two clauses.
Yeah, but he was.
He
But he
worked
was.
on the model all night. He was bleary-eyed during the presentation. So what is the relationship you get?
They're both connected, basically.
Yeah, they're both connected. How are they connected? Is it a cause-effect connection? Is it a
Yeah,
contrast
staying online
connection?
gave him a broad eye.
Yeah. So
So we
you,
can
so
put a
what
but.
is but? When is but used?
Okay, but wouldn't make sense.
But would be for a contrast coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember the fanboys conjunction FANBOYS. So for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Now for we cannot use, and doesn't go in over here. And he was weary-eyed, could be used, but so would makes better sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was weary-eyed. We can add to the comma, or we can just replace the comma with a semicolon. Okay. What about this one? Studying every day is not how I want to spend my summer, comma, I want to make lasting memories with friends.
Just put a semicolon or
Just
colon.
put a semicolon. Or if you don't have a semicolon, what other punctuations you could use?
You can use colon.
You can use a colon or a single dash.
But you can just use a period.
You can also use a period. We would preferably use a semicolon because the two ideas are related. Now, if the two ideas are not related, we will definitely use a period. But if the two ideas are related, we would prefer a semicolon to a period. Okay.
Yeah.
Or we could use a comma and a conjunction, a subordinating conjunctions also, because we have two independent clauses. We can convert one of the independent clauses to a dependent clause.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that case, in that case, we will not use a comma over here. Right? Because the second part becomes a dependent clause. Okay. So let's look at this one. The class focus on programming languages, comma, such as Python, semicolon, algorithm, semicolon, and documentation. What do you think?
Algorithms and documentation is in Python, so.
Look at all the punctuations that have come in.
So you need a semicolon before such as.
Why would you need a semicolon before such as? Such as is doing what? Such as is setting up the examples.
Yeah. Or you need a comma.
You need a comma before. Whenever you have such as, you will have only comma before such as, no other punctuation. Right? Now, what about this? We have a semicolon here and semicolon here. What is a semicolon doing over here?
You don't need semicolon, right? You can just put a comma.
We need a comma. Yeah. Because it's just a list and no item in the list has a comma within it. Okay. Okay, let's look at this one. The antique bookshop also sold other paper ephemera such as comma, maps, and newspapers. What's the error in this sentence?
Just put a comma before such as.
Before such as and no comma after such as. Yeah, very good. Okay. Okay. Now, how about this one?
Put a semicolon.
Okay, semicolon where? So we have the State Department completed 3 assignments, colon. This is okay. This is an independent clause. Colon is fine. Now what comes
It's
after
going to
the
be
colon is a
after
list. Yeah.
after control.
After control, we need a semicolon. And where
And
else?
after directive.
After director. So the items in the list read like diplomatic talks, comma, led by an expert in arms control, semicolon, a bilateral meeting, comma, chaired by an assistant director, semicolon, and a state visit. Yeah. Okay, you got a hang of this now, right?
Yeah.
So we can move on to questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, solving exercises. Okay, let's look at this one. Read carefully with focus on punctuations.
Is it C?
Hmm? C.
C.
Yeah, why did you take C? We clearly have
Dash.
a dash here. We need another dash. And what reads in the middle? Her favorite class. Alison enjoyed studying for art history. Her favorite class. Able to learn about, because she was able to learn about Picasso and Monet. Okay. Now let's look at number 2.
Mm.
Now here, if you see, there's this sentence which has been repeated in the options. So we need to look at what is the error in the sentence, whether it is correct or not. One of the sentences in the options, one of the options may be repetition of what we have. Should be. Or maybe not. So we have to see what we have. If it is not repeated, that means it should have an error. If it is repeated in the answer options, then we have to see whether it is correct or not. So we can read the first sentence also for reference. When one thinks of American writers who have commented on self-sufficiency, one naturally thinks of Ralph Waldo Emerson, right? Okay, leading the transcendentalist movement, comma, Emerson championed individualism, semicolon, and spoke against slavery. So semicolon and doesn't fit in, right? So we need something to do with this. Now, if you see, we have a comma over here also. We have to see if that is correct. Leading the transcendentalist movement, Emerson championed individualism. So this comes in as a modifier. Yeah.
I think it's going to be option. Wait, that's wrong.
What would be the answer?
Now
just look at your, just think of the options that you require. Now we require a comma over here. Yeah. Now we need, what do we need over here? Either, now if you read the sentence, Emerson championed individualism and spoke against slavery. So do we need a punctuation over here? If so, what do we need? Sure enough, we don't go with semicolon. So what would we require in place of the semicolon? Now read the sentence. First, what you do is just read the sentence and put in your own punctuations. Don't think about the punctuations that are given to you. Just if you were to write the sentence, what are the punctuations you would put in?
I think it's going to be a comma after and before and.
Spoke against slavery, would that be an independent clause?
Spoke. Huh? No, I said before and.
Yeah, so if you were to put a comma before and, what does it imply? This should be an independent clause.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Okay,
So
if it's
leading
not an
the
independent clause, we
leading
can
the
put it.
transition movement, emotion, champion individualism, that comes as an independent clause. Now, what comes after and should be an independent clause.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do we have an
Yeah.
independent clause over here?
No.
No, it's just a phrase. Yeah.
Mhm.
So in that case, we can keep and we don't really need any punctuation,
Okay.
right? So we keep the comma here and remove punctuation before and. So championed individualism and spoke against slavery. So he did two things. He championed individualism, he spoke against slavery. So if I say,
Okay. Those are two options.
Rayan studied for the SAT and his school exams, right? So would you put a comma in between?
No.
No. So the same thing over here. So which is the option that is giving you a comma? See, if
Option
you look
C.
at C, we have a comma here and no punctuation. So anything with a semicolon is obviously you eliminated. Now you are a little confused about the comma and you are left with C and D if you eliminate A and B, right? So then you go on to see whether you need a comma or not.
Yeah.
So the moment you put a comma, you know that what comes after and should also be an independent clause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Comma, fanboys conjunction, both sides should be independent clause. Right? So here we don't have an independent clause. Okay. So don't get fooled by the and comma and everything else coming in between. You have to be very clear what of what is required. Okay, now here it's referring to the entire sentence. Whether the entire sentence has some problem, should if it is correct, then you go with no change. If there is a problem, then you look for the correct solution. If you look at the options, you have a comma here, period, you have a dash, period, you have a dash question mark, and you have a question mark with and a comma in the sentence that you've got. So reading the sentence, what can you figure out? Is it a question?
No.
It's a statement. So surely we don't need a question mark. So what do we eliminate then? We eliminate
Option
D.
B. Yeah.
Yeah.
Option D and option A.
Option A also. Because obviously we need a period at the end. Now we go on to figuring out the comma over here. Only one aspect of the mystery remained for her to unravel.
I think it's option C.
So we can use now only comma will not be correct. Only one aspect of the mystery remained for her to unravel is an independent clause. The location of the missing prized chihuahua, that is telling us what was the mystery, right?
Yeah.
So we can go with C, a single dash. Okay, now let's look at number 4. Now this is the same format of the question. The sentence given to you, whether it is correct or not, you will go with no change if it is correct. Otherwise, you will look for the correct punctuation.
I think it's no change. It makes sense.
Makes sense. So I was wondering why he asked the group to go to the new restaurant when it dawned on me. So what dawned on me? The restaurant had a special on macaroni and cheese, his favorite meal. So that could be correct. We'll just look at the others. When it dawned on me, semicolon, another semicolon, we will not use two semicolons in a sentence.
Yeah.
We can use only one. Okay, another thing, whenever you have two semicolons, we can use only one semicolon between two clauses, and we can use a semicolon if this is a list. So here we don't have a list, so we cannot use more than one semicolon. Okay, I was wondering why he asked the group to go to the new restaurant when it dawned on me that the restaurant had a special on macaroni and cheese, semicolon, his favorite meal. That also doesn't work. His favorite meal. So these two are linked together. It could be a dash, but not semicolon. Okay, D colon, his favorite meal would be fine. But I was wondering why he has to go to the restaurant. And me, when it dawned on me, the restaurant had a special macaroni and cheese. So this comma would be incorrect, right? So we will go with no change. The sentence as it stands is correct. Okay. Now we move on.
Yeah, we're doing questions.
Yeah, we're doing questions.
Section 8 questions, right?
Yeah.
My questions are different, that's why.
Yeah, these I picked up some of these extra questions which were related to specifically to punctuations. So these are the old course type questions where you have the no change as an option. Now you just have a blank given to you and you have to fill in the option. Okay, these are like multiple punctuations. So you have to figure out whether all of them are correct or not. So here you see we have a comma here, we have a comma here, again comma, comma, and. Now bacon, breadcrumbs, and chopped up onions, that's a list. So these two commas would be correct, right? But what about these two?
Yeah, I think it's option B.
Option B. Okay, let's see. So here, what is it doing? Now this comma is incorrect. We have to replace it with something. So we are setting up a list. We can use a colon. It was adding a few extra ingredients too, right? And all of them have commas. So we will go with a comma, and only we are dealing with this particular punctuation. A colon will be the correct punctuation, right? Okay, now just one more of these types. You can also look at the now a portion is underlined for you, only this sentence is underlined. I have started two companies which I run simultaneously, both mine companies. Now first of all, this should be my companies. Yeah, so anything with my companies will be correct. Anything else you see? Now here you have multiple grammar rules coming in.
Yeah.
So you have an apostrophe, which also we consider as a punctuation. So would the apostrophe be correct over here?
No.
No. What do we have?
Companies.
I have two
it's
companies.
already in plural, so it's gonna be
yeah.
S.
So we need a plural. We just need apostrophe. We don't need the S.
Yeah.
So which
option
of these options would be correct? Option B, right? Okay, let's look at this one. So these questions I have put in basically to test yourself on punctuation before we move on to the new SAT type of questions. So this is a good exercise on multiple punctuations in a sentence. It says the federal government of the United States is made up of 3 branches, colon, the legislative branch, which includes the House of Representatives and the Senate, comma, the executive branch, comma, which includes the presidency and law enforcement, and the judicial branch, which includes the federal courts, including the Supreme Court. So what would be correct in this case? Now, first figure out the error. Is there any error? Now we have a lot of commas and we have a colon. Those are the punctuations that we have figured out in the sentence. Now first thing we have to see whether the colon is correct. So what is the first test of a colon?
I think it's just a sec. Yeah, it's option C.
Option C. Okay. So
yeah.
Now is the colon used correctly?
Yeah.
Does it pass the test of the independent clause before it? Yes, it has an independent clause before it. But now if we look at the options given to you, none of these options have a colon in middle. But
no, they
but
started
we know,
from the, that's why.
Yeah. So it began with what is coming after the colon. So we are looking at this. So we have a list of things. Yeah. And the items in the list have commas in the middle. They should be separated with the help of semicolons. So C will give you the correct option. Okay. So now one more of this type. I hope this is the last one of this type. Okay. How about this? The town's local garlic festival has gotten a little out of hand, she thought, observing the year's specialty foods with a grimace. The newest fat food was garlic ice cream that included entire chunks of roasted garlic as well as garlic sauce. So what's wrong over here?
We don't need a comma when there is a dash.
Yeah, we don't need a comma before that. So we look at the all options. Option D. Now, here we have it included. That is would be wrong. We have 2 independent clauses. Period, that is incorrect. Now we come to comma which. Yes, if you have a comma, that could be replaced with which. Yeah, so that would be correct. Okay. So now we come to our classroom worksheet that you have in your book, right? So according to Naomi Nakayama of the University of Edinburgh, the reason seeds from a dying dandelion appear to float in the air while falling is that their porous plumes enhance drag, allowing the seeds to stay airborne, etc., etc. So we need to plug in something over here. So what would you go with? You have falling comma, falling colon, semicolon, and no punctuation.
Option B.
Option D. Okay, Reyansh, I think there is some problem with your network or mine. Can you hear me clearly or my voice is breaking?
I can hear you clearly.
You can hear me clearly? Yeah, your voice is breaking a little. Okay, yes, we will go with D, no punctuation required, because if you read the sentence, the reason seeds from dying dandelion appear to float in the air while falling. So while falling is that there's no need of any punctuation. And sure enough, colon and semicolon don't work, not even comma. Okay, how about this one? An element's atomic number is equal to the number of protons in its nucleus and the number of electrons in its uncharged state, comma, and approximately half of its atomic mass. So equal to, what do we need after equal to? Do we need something? You have four options again: colon, semicolon, comma, nothing at all.
I think it's D again.
It's D again. We really don't need any punctuation over here. Right. Okay. Now, if you see these questions, you have a phrase with different types of punctuations coming in the middle. So we know this relates to punctuations. Okay, when he returned from Galapagos Island in 1835, Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet. She or who would live over 170 years before passing away at the Australian Zoo in 2606. Yeah. So we want, okay, here if you see, there is she and there is who. What do you think would be the correct answer?
I don't know why B makes sense.
Hmm. Now, what about the punctuations coming in?
Is it
No.
D?
Hmm?
D.
Okay, let's plug in D, B and C. Now, if you are using a semicolon, what do you need? You need an independent clause before, independent clause after. Yeah, clear independent clauses on both sides. So when he returned from Galapagos Island in 1835, Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet, semicolon. She would live over 170 years before passing. Okay, now she or who? We have two options over here. Yeah. Who would live over 170 years?
Yeah,
Now, if you add who over here, would it be an independent clause?
No.
So we can go with semicolon.
If there was a question mark, then that'd be right?
Question mark.
At the end of this.
No, it's still a statement.
Okay.
Yeah. She would live over 170 years. Now, would we go with a comma? No, because clearly if we use she, we have two independent clauses. Yeah. So we can't have just a comma. So we will go with D, not B. Okay. So when you are a little confused between two options, what do? Plug in the option, see whether if you are using a semicolon, do you have independent clauses on both sides? Yeah, that's the main test for semicolons. Okay, let's look at this one. We have a blank here and we have halted with a dash, a colon, comma, and nothing at all. So we have to go into the meaning of the sentence. What is it trying to tell us? Fieldwork in a city has to be done intermittently. There's a colon over here. The construction crew had to proceed one block at a time to avoid interrupting traffic. And the archaeology team's work was periodically halted by storm weather and the discovery of toxic materials underground. So we already have a colon over here. We would not use a dash because we cannot change the colon. That is there. The purpose of the colon is to separate information from the independent clause, right? So in this information, when we have the extra information coming in, what do we need over here after halted? We right?
Nothing. Just leave it.
Do we need anything? We don't need anything.
Just leave it like
the
it.
work was periodically halted by storm weather. Nothing is required. Okay, now this one. We have site, including site among these were site comma including, site semicolon including. So site including or site among these were. We have to see which one of these would fit in, right? So in August 2013, the archaeologists discovered thousands of objects in a single 15-foot stretch that was likely a garbage disposal site, including buttons from Revolutionary War uniforms, clay pipes, and an imported mineral water bottle from Germany.
C.
So what would you go with? Comma, and then including buttons from, yeah, that makes sense. Among these would become a bit too many words. It becomes wordy. So we will not go with wordy, even though grammatically it is correct. We don't go with something that is wordy. We go with something that is concise. So including is concise. We will stick to including. We will not go with period or semicolon. Only option remaining is C. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's look at the sixth one. Declined or declined as. Now we have a semicolon and period between declined and as. Let's see. In 2013, Tallinn, Estonia, instituted fare-free rides for city residents, becoming the largest city in the world to do so. That's in brackets or parenthesis, comma, but car use in Tallinn was only slightly declined as a 2014 study by the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden found that car traffic in Tallinn was down less than 3% since the policy was enacted. So we have declined, and so declined would be, okay, we need declined. Now, what do we need after declined? Now, so, but now if you read this entire sentence, in 2013, Tallinn, Estonia instituted fare-free rides for city residents. We can remove the portion within the parenthesis, but car use in Tallinn was only slightly declined. Yeah, so this is an independent clause, right? So now we will not use a comma before a study. So this is an independent clause. A study by KTH Institute of Technology in Sweden found that car traffic in Tallinn was down less than 3% since the policy was enacted. So only comma over here will not fit in because both are independent clauses, right? So we eliminate C. Now, period as, would we use period as?
No.
No, right? So now what do we do? Would we use semicolon as? Period as is pretty much the same function as semicolon as. Do we use as after the semicolon? No. If we want to use semicolon, we would use just a semicolon because we already have two independent clauses. So A is also eliminated. We are left with B. Right? So we are talking about that is fair free rights for city residents, but car use had only slightly declined. And this is an explanation of a study which showed how much how much it has declined. Right? So a colon would be the correct answer. And anyway, so if you are not very sure about which punctuation should go in, go with the process of elimination. Eliminate the ones which are incorrect. You will obviously come to the one that is correct. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now you can try this one.
Example.
What do you think? You have example of publishers. Plug it in over here. Read the sentence with example of publishers and figure out what is the punctuation that you would require.
Is it D?
B. So the shift from golden to silver age is probably the most successful example of responding to changing times and tastes. So you will not require colon. You don't require. So this is a preposition. No commas before preposition. Right? And here if we see example of publishers, comma, responding to changing times and taste. We don't need a comma over here, right? So D is our best answer in this case. Okay, one more here. By virtue of the medical training, PS can perform many of the jobs traditionally done by doctors, comma, including treating chronic and acute conditions, performing minor surgeries, and prescribing some medications. Yeah. So what is it that you need? Surgeries and now what is the portion before the blank? We have a list sort of, right? Many jobs traditionally performed by doctors, in comma, including treating chronic and acute conditions, comma, performing minor surgeries. So that is part of a list. So what do we need?
Option D.
Option D, right? Comma and. So we won't go with semicolon because we don't have any comma within an item in the list, a particular item in the list. And colon doesn't go. And after the comma is again incorrect. Okay, so we did our 8 questions here, right? So you're thorough with your punctuations?
Yeah.
Your clauses, modifiers, all the lessons so far? Okay, so now we will move on to our last part, which is transitions. Now, so far we have used transitions. When we spoke about subordinating conjunctions, those were transitions, right? So what do transitions do? Transitions are words that or conjunctions that connect two thoughts or two sentences according to the relationship between the two parts of the sentence or two thoughts or two different sentences, right? So remember we used conjunctions and said what type of conjunction do we use? Is it a contrast? We use but. If it is one giving the cause of the other, one is the effect of the other, so we use because, therefore, thus, right?
Yeah.
So now the question would, now the transition questions, you don't have to be like, I don't know what type of question is it, it will tell you specifically. Find the most logical transition word or phrase to connect information and ideas. So you know it is a transition question. You'll get about four to five transition questions in each module. Yes, that's why transitions are very important. So conjunctions and conjunctive adverbs can be used as transitions. Yeah. What do? They give a relationship between ideas and sentences. So you could have words or phrases.
Okay.
So like addition, when you talk about additional information. So you have a sentence talking about an idea, and the rest of the next part of the sentence maybe is elaborating on that idea.
Yeah.
So you would be using words like furthermore, moreover, additionally, right? So that those are words you use for addition. Now, what are the words you use for bring about contrast? Despite, although. So we'll go into the details. So these are the different types of transition you will call. So you can come across causation. There is cause-effect relationship. So you will since, because, these type of words come in. Okay. So we'll begin with addition, or it could also be agreement to something. So what do the addition or agreement words do? Support or build of another. Okay. So they suppose an idea is given to you and you are providing examples to support the idea, or you are giving a second statement to elaborate on the first idea that you have given. So it could be elaboration, providing examples, or reinforcing an idea. So what are the words you would have? In addition, furthermore, for example, and, also, likewise, moreover, similarly, correspondingly. So similarly and correspondingly, you have said one thing and you are comparing, and you say that this is similar to that. Equally, so all similarly, correspondingly, and equally could replace each other. Okay, let's look at some how they can be used. Climate change is causing many heat-related deaths. Moreover, it is leading to conditions that in the long run will harm us all. So what are the two sentences doing? First one is talking about climate change causing heat-related deaths. Second one is saying it is leading to conditions that in the long run will harm us. We should have that here. Come on here. Okay. That in the long run will harm us. So these can harm us in the long run means it's giving you some more information. Over and above heat-related deaths, it's going to harm you in the long run. So we can use more over here. So the using the correct word is important. Okay, if you look at this, throughout history, painters were endangered by poisonous ingredients in their plants, in their paints. The use of lead in white paint, for instance, caused lead poisoning in many famous artists, including Vincent van Gogh. Right? So here you have, for instance, the first sentence is giving us a fact. Yeah, that painters were throughout history, painters were endangered by poisonous ingredients in their paints. Yeah, and the second sentence is elaborating on that, giving you an example. The use of lead white in paint, for instance, caused less poisoning in famous artists, including Van Gogh. So, a fact, an example supporting it. So, we use for instance. Okay, if you had to set up a contrasting relationship, say you talk about disagreement or contrast, or one idea opposes the other. Yeah. So we use however, we can use on the other hand, but, yet, conversely, still, in contrast, despite, unlike, even, or even though, or just though, although, nonetheless, notwithstanding. All these will show that the one idea is not in accordance to the other idea, right? There's a disparity between the two. So she practices tennis every day, though she is still unable to hit the solid backhand. So she practices tennis every day is your statement. She is unable to hit a solid backhand is your second part. Now, these are contrasting ideas. If she practices tennis every day, she should be good at it. But she is still unable to. So the simplest conjunction you can use here is but. So instead of but, though is a better way of bring out the connection between the ideas. Chris is an extremely popular singer. However, his voice isn't very good. We have, he is a popular singer, but his voice isn't very good. Contrasting ideas, we can use however, right? Okay, now we said cause effect relationship, there is a causation, means one statement is the reason for the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing is happening because of the other. So one leads directly to another, we can say. So maybe the second sentence is caused by or a consequence of the idea in the first sentence. So accordingly, you will be placing your conjunction or choosing the correct transition. Now, transitions of showing cause-effect relation would be consequently, therefore, since. So since can be used before, that is when something is causing the problem. Since this happened, something else happened. Okay, because subsequently does, so as a result, these are all words which show a cause-effect relationship. Because of tuition hikes at the private school, many parents are opting to send their children elsewhere. Now, we've already used words like this. Our purpose was to convert one of the clauses into a dependent clause. So while we were using these words, what did we do? We also saw that what is the relationship. According to that, we use a word, right? So what is because doing here? It is showing that the tuition hikes was the reason why parents opted to send their children elsewhere. Okay, let's look at this one. The level of competition in college sports has become fiercer than ever. Therefore, athletes and coaches are seeking even more sophisticated training. So why are they seeking sophisticated training? So when you talk about a cause-effect relationship, somewhere down the line, the question why is answered, right? So the level of competition in the college sports has become fiercer than ever. That is the reason. So that answers the why. And what is the why? Athletes and coaches are seeking ever more sophisticated training regimens. Why they are doing so? The previous sentence should tell you. So in that case, we would use therefore. Okay, now there's another type of transition which would come in. That is sequence and order. So if you organize something, say in a chronological order, say a chronological order of time or a chronological order of position, then what are the different types of words that you come in? Previously, first, then, afterwards, finally, subsequently. These all tell you the order of events, right? Something happened first, or something previously this happened, but later on something else happened, or presently something happened. So even if you have presently, that will show what is happening right now. Say after 3 hours of waiting in the lobby, we were finally admitted into the office, right? First, Carolyn completed an ACT prep course, then she took the test itself. So both first and then show you what came before and what came later. Okay, so now these are the 3 types of transition word, or the 4 types of transition words, mainly 3 that you would come across, and you would have to see which transition word fits in correctly, depending upon the relationship between the 2 parts of the sentences or the ideas that are given to you. Yeah. So first thing you do is summarize the text in your own words to figure out what are the ideas. So what is the main idea? What is it talking about? Identify the relationship between the ideas. Determine whether the sentence has an addition, contrast, or causation relationship. Yeah. And then you determine which word you would use. So some word comes to your mind. Yeah. Suppose the first thing that comes to your mind is and. Now, in your options, you will see what is there, is and there, or is there any other word which is related to and or a synonym of and. So first thing is the transition word you would use. If that word is not available in the options, a synonym of the word can be used. Got it? Yeah. Okay. And so the transition that matches the relationship will go in. And of course, if you are not very sure, at least eliminate the choices that don't make sense or are grammatically incorrect. So grammatically correct sentences also. Suppose you have similar synonyms. Now, instead of and, one of the options has furthermore, another option has additionally. Now, both furthermore and additionally would be correct. Yeah. In that case, you would see whether the which sentence is grammatically correct. If one of the sentences is grammatically incorrect, you would eliminate. Yeah. And the best test for any of the fill in the blank questions is plug in your answer, read the sentence again, and make sure that your answer is correct. So if the transition is logical, sentence is making sense, that's your answer. Got it? Yeah. Yeah. So we can do some questions. Yeah. Okay, we'll begin with some simple ones before we move on to the more complicated ones. So Jeremy never studies, dash, he gets perfect grades on his exams. So Jeremy never studies, he still gets perfect grades. So it's a contrasting relationship. Yeah. So what would you use? See, however, it won't be therefore, it won't be likewise, it won't be also. How about this? It says Josephine enjoyed volunteering at the school, local animal shelter after school. Blank. It was not difficult to meet her school's annual volunteerism requirement. So we can say because she volunteered, she was able to meet the annual volunteerism requirement. Right? So what type of relationship do we get? We have a cause-effect relationship. Because of something, something became easier. So despite would be eliminated. As a consequence of this could be correct. Thus could be correct. Similarly eliminated. Now, which one would you go for? As a consequence of this or thus? You would go with thus. Why? It is concise. Right? Okay, now here we have a little bigger passage, about 3 sentences. So now in these questions, in the transition questions, if you have a blank in the beginning of a sentence, it is very important to understand what the previous sentence is talking about, to establish the relationship between this sentence and the previous one. So we have, in a heated debate in biogeography, the field is divided between disparalists and vicariancists. Okay, so these are the two fields of biogeography. Dispersalists, if you see, they talk about seeds or the growth by dispersion, and vicariancists talk about growth or progeny by sticking to one particular area. Okay, so dash, so we have furthermore, whatever. Dash, there are those who argue that dispersal is the most crucial determining factor in the species distribution, and those who insist what vicariance, that is separation due to geographical barriers, is. So what should go in? Biogeographer Isabel Sanatin counts herself among neither. So this is talking about two thoughts, and this is explaining what the two thoughts are. So would you say furthermore there are those who argue? No. It is explaining the two thoughts. One is talking about dispersal and the other is talking about vicariance. So it is explaining the two thoughts. So not furthermore or by contrast. Yeah. Would similarly go in? Similarly and furthermore mean the same. Similarly also doesn't go in. That is should fit in. So if we say that is, there are those who argue. So this is giving an explanation. So when it is given an explanation, we can say that is. Right? Okay, let's look at another one. So can you read the question and try to solve it? I beg your pardon? However, yes, I think it should be however. Let's see. What does the first sentence tell us? That it has long been thought that humans first caused language approximately 13,000 years ago. Now, based on radiocarbon dating of samples in Mexico, a team recently suggested that humans may have arrived 30,000 years ago, much earlier than previously thought. So we have a contrasting relationship. We can't have similarly in conclusion. We'll go with however. Okay, let's look at this one. Wish cycling dash, putting non-recyclable items into recycling bins under the mistaken belief that those items can be recycled dash. Now here look at the punctuations. That means this is an extra information. So what is this doing? This is explaining what wish cycling is. Ultimately does more harm than good. So wish cycling ultimately does more harm than good. Non-recyclable items such as greasy pizza boxes can contaminate recyclable material, rendering the entire batches unusable. Yeah. Dash, non-recyclable products can damage recycling plants' machinery. So what is this telling us? First is telling us what wish cycling is. And then it goes on to tell us why we should not go into putting things away for recycling which are not recyclable. So non-recyclable items such as, it gives us examples, yeah, render the entire batches unusable. And this is talking about can damage recyclable plant machinery. Recycling plants machinery. So there are two reasons, first reason and the second reason why we should not put in non-recyclable items. So what would go into the blank here?
I think it's
Hmm? Pardon?
A.
A, moreover, right? Fittingly, no, nevertheless would set up a contrast. On the contrary is also a contrast. We are adding another point, so moreover. Okay, how about this one? It begins with although, means we are already talking about a contrasting idea, right? Although advocates of organic food preserve that organic produce is healthier than conventionally grown produce because it has more vitamins and minerals, this assertion is not supported by scientific research, right? So here we have a contrasting idea. Now let's see what we need here. On the review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, provided on review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, provided analysis of the results of compared studies conducted over a span of 50 years. Researchers consistently found no evidence that organic crops are more nutritious. So we are talking about a review published which tried to prove that the organic products were not as more nutritious than the normally grown products. So what can we use over here? We have, if for instance, however, in addition, likewise.
It's however.
However, do you think however would go? The first statement has already given us two things. Although organic food preserve that advocates of organic food say that organic produce is healthier than conventionally grown, but here we say no, they have used although over here. So what is the contrasting idea? This assertion is not supported by scientific research. Yeah. Now the second sentence, what is the second sentence is doing? It is supporting this fact by giving you some proof. So this is giving you proof from the review published in the American Journal.
Okay, so in addition.
So we will, it is not, however. In addition, I don't think so. Yeah. So in addition and likewise have the same function. So for instance fits in because this is giving you an example of a study which has proven this fact. So for instance can go in, right? Okay. Now let's look at this one, number 7.
Is it D? D.
B or D?
D.
D. Okay, let's see if D fits in. Now, what is it? What is this passage talking about? Lawrence Fozzi varied his focus and tone depending on the genre in which he was writing. Now, this should give you a clue, right? Varied his focus and tone means his focus and tone was not the same in all the journals that he wrote. In his poetry, he used heartfelt language. So he's talking about poetry. He used heartfelt language to evoke the beauty and peacefulness of his natural surroundings. In his journalism, he employed humor and satire to comment on political issues affecting his Muskogee Creek community, right? So what is this sentence doing? In poetry, he used heartfelt language to evoke beauty and peacefulness. In journalism, he used humor and satire. So are humor and satire similar to heartfelt language to invoke peace? No, right? It is quite contrasting. Yeah. So we will not go with similarly, we will go with by contrast. Now, one thing you will notice that when you have a passage like this, you will always look into the context in the previous sentences or the sentences after it. So when you look into the context, you will obviously get your answer. Now here, if you look at the first sentence, he varied his focus and tone depending on the genre in which he was writing, right? And the second sentence gives us two genres he was writing, and definitely they are varying tones and focuses. So immediately we know we are talking about a contrast. So varying will be related to contrast. Okay, what about this question? So when one looks at the dark, craggy vistas in Hitoshi Fuga's evocative photo series, one's mind may wander off to the cratered surfaces of faraway planets. Yeah. Dash, it's the series title, Frying Pan, that brings one back to Earth, reminding the viewer that each photo is actually a close-up of view of a familiar household object, a frying pan.
Is it? I'm confused between C and D.
C and B. Hmm?
C and D.
C and D. Okay. So what do you think? Okay, let's forget about the options given to us. Just let's see what it is talking about. So when one looks at the craggy vistas, one might wander off to the cratered surfaces of faraway planets. So when we look at the paintings, we think of faraway planets, right? Now its series title, Frying Pan, that brings one back to Earth. So it brings us back to Earth, means we come back to reality, reminding the viewer that each photo is actually a close-up view of a familiar household object. So we won't go with alternately, obviously. Additionally, no, we have something like we first thought that this was a series of of faraway planets, the surfaces of faraway planets. But when we look at the title, and then we are ultimately or finally reminded of the closer view of familiar household objects. So we will go with ultimately over here. It's not consequently. Consequently would be so ultimately would give you the time frame. First, we thought that it was of faraway planets, but when we looked at them closely, or when we had a close-up view, or even the title brought us back to Earth when we found that they were just close-up views of familiar household objects. So consequently doesn't fit in. It is not because of something. Additionally doesn't fit in, right? Ultimately is the only one that makes sense. Okay, these are questions from your classroom worksheet now. Yeah. Would you want? Yeah, we have time. We can do them. Right. We'll do some of them as far as possible. So try to figure this out. I think now you are used to the passage type with a blank. So what is first? So what is the first thing you do? You try to understand the different ideas that this passage has. Yeah. So say the first sentence. What is the first sentence telling us? Sorry. So if you look at the first sentence, what is it trying to tell us? Iraqi artist, now celebrated as the first Arabic poet to write verse, didn't reject traditional forms. So didn't reject traditional forms entirely. So didn't reject entirely. This is a key word. Her poem, Elegy of a Woman of No Importance, consists of 2-line stanzas and a standard number of syllables. Now, even in this superficially traditional work, yeah, so when you have even in this superficial, that means something different is going to come up. Even in the traditional work, Al-Malaika was breaking new ground by memorializing an anonymous woman rather than a famous man. So some sort of contrast coming in, right? So they are already talking about her being using the traditional form. Now, what was different in this? That's what the second part is talking about, right? So what can we get? What words should we fill in? You can use be, though, right? So though sets up the contrast. Plug it back in and read the sentence again. Even in the superficially traditional work, though, Malaika was breaking new ground by memorializing an anonymous woman rather than a famous man, right? So therefore, moreover, in fact, could have gone in, but we have though, which is a better contrast, right? We will not go with in fact. That's why. If though did not exist, we could have gone with in fact. Oh, sorry. Okay, question number 2. So what is the idea of in the 2 sentences? Pardon, Rehan, your voice is cracking. It's barely audible. Are you having some sort of Wi-Fi problem?
I don't think so.
Okay, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Is it B?
Be accordingly. So what is the relationship you got here?
Sorry.
The first one said reforestation efforts, while undeniably valuable, often result in forests with limited biodiversity. Right?
Yeah.
And care should be taken to plant a wide variety of native flora in depleted woodlands. So we get a cause effect relationship because we find that reforestation has led to limited biodiversity. we should plant a wide variety of native flora. So, however is not the answer. Nevertheless, furthermore, nevertheless, however, are both contrasting ideas. Furthermore is additional. Accordingly, gives the correct uh, meaning over here. Okay, let's look at this one. Gordie Howe hat trick. Okay, what happened?
I don't know. My computer is working, but your voice is not your voice.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, if I increase the volume to 100.
Okay, so there must be some problem with your audio then, or with
No,
your
like when I left the
network.
Zoom and I played some video, it worked.
Huh.
When I joined back, it's causing some problems.
Okay, there could be some problem with Zoom then, connectivity through Zoom. Okay, so I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can also hear you better. So here we have these two sentences. Gordie Howe hat trick, an unofficial statistic in which a hockey player scores a goal, records an assist, and gets in a fight all in the same game, is named after hockey great Gordie Howe. Now, Howe only achieved this feat twice in his professional career, far fewer times than many other players. So, what should go in over here? Now, what is the relationship between the two sentences you get? The first sentence tells us that this particular feat is named after Gordie Howe, but he achieved this feat only twice in his professional career, far fewer times than any other player.
The A.
Hmm? So it's a contrasting relationship. We won't have therefore afterwards as a result, however makes sense. Right? Okay, let's look at the next one. Try reading it.
Is it B?
Let's see. You're sure about B?
Yeah.
Hmm? Okay. Now you say, for example. Now, what is the first part telling us? Researchers believe that pieces of hull found off Oregon's coast are from a Spanish cargo ship that was lost in 65. Stories passed down among the area's Confederate tribes of Siletz Indians support this belief. Siletz stories describe how blocks of bivouacs, etc., etc. So this is telling us a fact, and it is telling us about a belief. And this last part is giving you examples to show that this is what they believe. So for this reason, no, however, no, likewise, no, it is, we are talking about examples of for example. Okay, number 5.
Wait, no.
Pardon?
Something.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you clearly. Can you repeat, please?
No, I didn't say anything.
Okay. So
Is it C?
is it C, consequently? Okay. So what is this talking about? It is talking about US postage stamps. Costs were paid by the recipient rather than the sender. So the recipients did not want to receive the letters because they didn't want to pay. So collecting this fee was slow and undelivered mail piled up. So as a consequence of the postage stamp, all this happened. So we can say consequently. You're absolutely correct. Okay, let's look at number 6. So what type of relationship is developed between these two sentences?
They're comparing, right?
It's comparing, right? So we will not go with consequently.
No,
We will not go
addition.
with in addition, neither nevertheless. Indeed would be the right
Why would you not
word.
go with D?
Nevertheless would be setting up a contrast. Do we have a contrast?
Aren't you comparing the 3,000 kilometers?
We are comparing.
Okay, never mind.
So it says the great depths involve nearly 3,000 kilometer mark Iceland's volcanoes as extreme outliers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many of the Earth's volcanoes are fed by shallow pockets of magma found less than 15 kilometers below the surface. Now, there isn't a direct contrast between the two. We have that this happens and this also happens. So these are like two extremes of, say, some are 3,000 kilometers deep, some are 15 kilometers deep, right? So nevertheless would not really fit in, because nevertheless would rather be like, this happens, but this also happens. No, this is not happening because there is a contrast to that. Both the things happen, right? So we would rather go with indeed instead of nevertheless in this case, right? So it is actually elaborating on the same idea, but giving us another point of view. Yeah, so it's not contrasting. Okay. So let's look at number 7 here.
Is it D?
On B or D?
D.
B.
D.
D, by comparison. Okay. So let's see if it goes. For example, there were about, now here we already said greatly vary. Yeah. For example, there were about 180 sunspots in November. And there were 2 sunspots in December. So we are comparing, and it is setting up a contrast also. But more than a contrast, it is comparing the 2 time periods. So by comparison would be correct. Okay, now we have one last question here. So let's see what goes in.
It's a D.
Pardon, B in many
D.
cases. D, however.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if however fits in. The first sentence is talking about, for years, biologists have experimented with using grime-eating bacteria rather than harsh chemicals to clean artifacts, and results have been impressive overall, right? These bacterial strains, which can metabolize centuries worth of oil, glue, dirt, and other surface impurities without creating harmful byproducts, have proven more effective than traditional chemical cleaning methods. So if we use however, it should be setting up a contrast. Do we have contrasting ideas? The first sentence is talking about scientists using bacteria rather than chemicals, and results have been impressive. The second sentence tells us how the bacterial strains work without creating harmful byproducts, proven more effective than traditional chemical cleaning methods. They're talking about the same thing. There's no contrast. And they're talking about the same thing. One is elaborating on the second sentence is elaborating
Yeah,
on
right.
the first
Because
sentence, right?
bacteria rather than harsh chemicals to clean artworks. But
Hmm.
then it says these bacterial stains.
Hmm.
But like, can't you like imagine you're saying something is
Strains,
clean, but then
bacteria.
however it stains.
It's
Strains.
strains,
Strains. Ah,
not stains.
never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is bacterial strains means the strains of bacteria that they are using, or the type of bacteria that they're using. So the end, if you say have proven more effective than traditional chemicals, so it is elaborating on the same idea.
Okay.
In fact, it is giving us some more points to show that this really works. So this is like these bacteria which can metabolize century worth of oil have proved. So in these cases, that is when they used it, they have proven to be more effective. So we won't go with however or as a result.
So in many cases.
In many cases.
Okay.
Now we won't go with additionally because it doesn't say that in addition to cleaning artworks what it does. It just elaborates and gives us an example to show that this really works. So
Okay.
in many cases would be the right answer. Got it? So how would you, in these type of questions, it's not it's not always plain and simple. What do you have to do? Analyze the given sentences to figure out the relationship. So the relationship between the sentences is what you have to figure out. Yeah.
Okay.
What type of relationship? So whether it is contrast, whether one is the cause of the other, or you have an additional information or one point supporting the other. So accordingly you will choose. So if it is a contrasting relationship, you will not go with an additional information transition, right?
Okay.
So you are thorough with this now. You will be able to do your mocks.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you begun with the class tests?
No.
No. Okay. So you can do one thing. Now I think Manish sir's reading portion and Anubhav sir's reading portion are going on simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now what you'll do is in the next 2-3 days, go through the entire portion of grammar that we did. Yeah, the standard English conventions, so all 9 sessions. You will go through them, revise all the grammar rules and the strategies of answering the questions, and then begin with taking the standard English convention mocks, not the reading section, the writing and language section mocks. It's not the mock, sorry, the class tests. So you'll get 3 class tests in this section and see how you fare.
Okay.
Right? So, and if you come up with any, okay, now I think answer explanations are also available. If you get stuck somewhere and maybe the question you couldn't answer in the test, so after the test, you can go through the answer explanations to figure out what was the answer and why it was so.
Okay.
Okay. So till now, anything that you feel was not explained?
Yes, I might have to go over chapter 9 again, but I think most of the words made sense.
So most of the now, so the main point here is to figure out the relationship.
Yeah.
So once, and the clues that maybe you get clues from the previous sentence. So the context will provide you the clues, and you will and eliminate all the wrong answers to get to the right one. So like in the 7th one, obviously in other words did not fit in. Similarly did not fit in, therefore did not fit in. The only one left was by comparison. So even if you don't get the correct word, you know there is something there which is similar to what you are thinking. And once you have eliminated all the others, which you know exactly that these cannot go in, whatever is remaining is your answer.
Okay.
Right? So the best way when you have options given to you, the best thing to do is look at the options, read the given passage, and figure out which ones will not be the correct answer.
Okay.
So always go by the process of elimination first. Right? So I think we come to the end of our sessions.
Yeah.
I hope you have been able to grasp everything properly. Yeah. So maybe some things you remember, some things you don't. So the first thing you do is revise all the chapters.
Okay.
Yeah. Go through the grammar rules. Go through the exercises in the book. Maybe in class we did a few extra examples. But more or less, when you go through the exercises in the book, you will know that, okay, yes, this we had done, this was the reasoning, this is where I was confused, right? And that will help you in preparing for the class test. So I think you can begin with class test this week itself. Yeah, maybe on, so depending upon when you have time. So these class tests are not too long, they're about 30 minutes class tests. Yeah. So you'll get 30 questions, and the class test will also help you in building up your speed.
Okay.
Yeah. So speed is very important. So you will not get more than say a minute to solve a question. Now, when it comes to the grammar questions, those are the easier ones. Now, transition words, you know, it takes a little longer. Grammar questions don't take so long. Yeah. So you save up time with the grammar questions before you move on to the other questions. Or maybe the other questions you've already done, you took a little more time in them. And then when you come to the grammar questions, you can do them a little faster. Okay. So now any doubts you come up with, write down your doubts. So say in the class test also, any question you think, okay, my answer is this, and you think your answer is correct. So just write it down. So maybe after 2 or 3 weeks, we can review all your answers and all your doubts so that everything is clear before you go into your final exams.
Okay.
Okay. So far, I hope everything is to your satisfaction. Yeah. Okay, then. Thank you very much. So you just get in touch with Manish sir. He will guide you to taking the class test. So that you don't let the class test pile up. Because when you are doing the sessions with Manish sir and Anubhav sir, each session has a class test. Two sessions together will make a class test. So as soon as two sessions get over, you can take a class test. So you can keep up to date with whatever is being done. And when everything gets over, you are ready for the mocks.
Okay.
Right? Okay, then. Thank you very much, Riyansh. It was very nice teaching you. Good interaction. All the best. Thank you, Rekha ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. End करूं?
Bye.
Bye.
End कर दीजिए. Thank you.